It's time for the Lisa Benson Show, your home for national security news and commentary. And now, your host, Lisa Benson.
Welcome, America, to the broadcast of the Lisa Benson Show. This is Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Happy to fill in for Lisa. And remember, this is the only broadcast on Salem Broadcasting solely dedicated to protecting the American homeland, the West, and its closest ally, Israel. And that week after week, the Lisa Benson Radio Show for National Security Matters brings accurate, measured, and intelligent information. Lisa Benson is away on a speaking tour in the Bible Belt, helping to educate and mobilize them to thwart the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the Bible Belt region. Her team of National Security Communication Task Force is working on the ground in Georgia and South Carolina for the next 2 weeks to represent the interests of America and Israel and to explain the current conflict, identify the Muslim Brotherhood penetration in local communities, and work with the communities to strengthen our national security policies. We wish her the best of success in speaking to thousands, and we hope she'll be back in the chair soon. I'm the president, as I mentioned, of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the author of a book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. And it's my pleasure and honor to sit in for Lisa while she's away. And I'm also honored to be joined by our co-host, my good friend, Jerry Gordon, who's the senior editor of the New English Review and its blog, The Iconoclast. Jerry.
Glad to be back.
Thanks. It's great to have you with me, and this is going to be a great program. We've just got so much to cover. And we're also going to be joined by Dr. Sherkoh Abbas, a veteran leader of the Syrian Kurdish community and president of the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria, also a longtime friend in the trenches, especially on the Syrian issue. Sherkoh, welcome.
Hello, Zuhdi. Hello, Jerry. Okay.
Great. So why don't we get right to it? The first thing that we have to talk about, and that's been obviously on the front of everyone's minds and prayers, is the conflict in Israel and Gaza and the warmongering as Hamas continues to send rockets. And I have to tell you, first off, I'm struck by just the venom and vitriol and sheer hate that's erupted in simply a matter of days here in the West and the U.S., and even beyond, obviously, the anti-Semitism, but just the sheer hate that's coming out from Hamas supporters all over the West and in the U.S. And unfortunately, we're not hearing voices that say not only free Gaza, but free Gaza from Hamas and the fact that Hamas has started this. It's almost as if the further you get from the Middle East, the more radical those voices are. And you have seen so many columnists in the Middle East saying, what the heck is Hamas doing? Why are they continuing to stoke war and victimize their populations? And we see columnists across the Arab world talking about that, and yet as we get further away from Israel, Western Islamists run by Muslim Brotherhood organizations, Hamas offshoots like the Council on American Islamic Relations continue to stoke hate. We saw a video of a rally in Atlanta where various Islamists were attacking videographers and making it seem as if that this is no longer America. And Jerry, what's your take on the level of discourse that we see?
Well, the level of discourse is rather biased, both via mainstream media and by, frankly, some of the social media battles that have been erupting over the last couple of weeks, one of which we were fortunate to have launched and hopefully defeated some folks who represented Hamas just about a week and a half ago. But the real story in this conflict is the discovery this week of what can only be characterized as a mega 9/11 plot by Hamas using those tunnels that have been discovered, more than 30 at this moment, and U.S. intelligence estimates more than 60 ultimately, that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad have excavated. Those tunnels were to be used for essentially an event on Rosh Hashanah this year to send hundreds, literally hundreds, of suicide commandos through there to attack Israeli villages and towns in the south and throughout the country through infiltration, endeavoring to both kill and also capture hostages. And so, therefore, the rocket war has taken a very severe turn, but it also justifies essentially the effort on the part of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to go in the ground incursion and essentially destroy those rocket caches and fighters. At this moment, something in the order of in excess of 1,030 Palestinians have been killed against 43 Israeli soldiers and an additional 3 civilians. However, that lopsided aspect hides a number of things, including the fact that upwards of 70% of those, according to Al Jazeera, are men aged 18 to 44 who clearly are likely to be Hamas and PIJ fighters. Zuhdi, back to you.
Yeah, and the amazing thing, Jerry, is that as the world learns about these tunnels and we see videos of them, and we start to realize the amount of effort and manpower and money and concrete that went into creating them, and we look at the missiles that are being launched, and we're learning that they had come from Iran, and you look at the amount of money that the Hamas leadership in Gaza had spent on this, and you wonder why, with all of the Arab awakening happening, why the Gazans continue to allow themselves to be led by corrupt leadership that has exploited their communities and has used, Mash'al is being revealed, has had palaces and stays at the Ritz and is living lavishly in Qatar and elsewhere while his population suffers. And yet the narrative to the West has been that they are, quote unquote, occupied and all the other nonsense that we see coming out of their propaganda. And why is that continuing to dominate? And yet the reality that we see now being revealed is actually quite the opposite of a corrupt leadership.
Well, it's true that it's corrupt to the extent that we now see revealed estimates of the fortune, for example, of Mashal, one of the leaders of Hamas, who lives in luxury, as you said, in Qatar, was estimated to be over $2.6 billion. Compare that with a study that was done recently about the deaths of 160 children in Gaza who died in the course of excavating those very tunnels that we've been talking about. That is atrocious behavior. In addition, you've got what only could be called a whole string of Hollywood productions akin to what happened in September of 2000 with the Al Dura blood libel accusation against the IDF that took Israel 13 years finally to resolve it and say it never occurred.
And, before, in the next segment, we're going to get to Sherkoh and talk about ISIS and Syria and a more strategic look at that country and the region. But as we're talking about Hamas, we look, Jerry, that Egypt, the UAE, Saudis, and many in the, the mafia club of the Arab League have even come out against Hamas lately. And, having said that, what is the dynamics that we see evolving now, maybe different than it has in the past, and with our frenemies there that, on the one hand, release radical ideology and billions of dollars across the world of Wahhabism and Salafism, and on the other hand, are really on the same side against Hamas here, even more so than we've ever seen before. What's the dynamic regionally that you think is happening there?
I think the dynamic there is basically a very loose coalition between Qatar on the one hand and Turkey, and you're correct. These are the frenemies. The U.S. administration has cultivated relationships with both countries. They are clearly Islamist. They are Muslim Brotherhood supporters. That was indicated by Qatar after the November 2012 Operation Pillar of Defense that the IDF launched and was concluded in 8 days in a ceasefire brokered by former Egyptian President Morsi, himself a Muslim Brotherhood leader. Qatar put on the table $405 million to, quote, fund reconstruction of Gaza, and there's more than ample evidence that a goodly portion of that was diverted essentially for the creation of these massive underground cities, tunnels, and entrances that facilitated this current war. And
Qatar has now placed itself, for anyone who wants to see how the enemies do it, Look at Qatar's information operation through Al Jazeera. We saw even a Democratic congressman, Brad Sherman, a couple of weeks ago talk about how they are facilitating enemies of America by defending Hamas and enemies of Israel. And yet few, far in between, have spoken out the way Brad Sherman has and others. And yet the bottom line is you look at their information operations. On the other hand, we've done very little, and we're allowing Egypt and others of our frenemies, if you will, to sort of be the counterbalance when, in fact, they're not always going to be looking out for American interests or Israeli interests. And we just sort of have to work with them as the lowest common denominator or the lowest hanging fruit, if you will.
Well, my one comment about that, Zuhdi, is something I learned a long time ago in my travels to Israel. The Israelis are very good about high tech. They're very good, essentially, about being the most significant military power in that troubled region. But when it comes to telling their story, they never get it across. And some of it is because Israelis and Jews are held to, quote, a higher moral standard by those people who really want to destroy them.
And I think that is such a good point to finish this segment on, is that how do we get out of this cycle of debating moral equivalency, which is absurd, between the war that Israel's fighting versus the terrorism that Hamas is doing, and the fact that no doubt that any loss of innocent life we would all want to prevent. But again, we saw this in the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Our soldiers, our sons and daughters, were fighting a legitimate war for global security against the Taliban, against their housing of al-Qaeda, against the forces of Saddam and others in Iraq and al-Qaeda there. And yet the images to the West and globally were that somehow we were killing civilians, and that was our intent, when obviously Hamas's intent is to kill civilians, and they view them every Israeli citizen as being a potential victim, while in the West we have a very different moral standard. How do we get that message out, that it's a very different moral standard that we have in the West?
I think it was simply said by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who indicated that Israel uses missiles to defend its people, as it has been over the last 20 days, while Hamas and its terrorist partners in Gaza use people to defend those missiles and rockets they're sending against innocent lives in Israel.
And when we come back, we'll talk about a country that has seen over almost 200,000 dead and 5 million displaced, talking about people and that are just continuing to suffer. And we talk about Syria.
Lisa Benson and the team of Lisa Benson Consulting have more than 25 years of experience in business development, public relations, strategic planning, and branding of candidates and causes. As a direct result of Lisa Benson's expertise, LBC's record of accomplishments has been witnessed by their many clients who have achieved more than $500 million in bottom-line results. If you're thinking of running for office, starting a nonprofit organization, or have an organization that's in need of gaining greater public attention to meet its goals, give Lisa a call at 602-790-6418. Lisa Benson is a compelling and engaging public speaker with in-depth knowledge on issues such as national security, foreign and domestic policy, and nationwide training on effective grassroots mobilization tactics. Call LBC today at 602-790-6418. That's 602-790-6418 to schedule your free 30-minute consultation or to book Lisa Benson to speak to your group.
If you're the mother of a child with behavior problems, I'd like to talk to you. My name is Janet Lehman. I'm a behavioral therapist and a mom. I know what it's like when the child you love becomes a defiant, out-of-control child who disrespects you. That's why my husband James and I created the Total Transformation, the program that tens of thousands of moms are now using to turn around their child's behavior. If you've heard about the Total Transformation and wondered if it will work for you, now you can try it for free. I'm willing to give away 1,000 programs today for free. All you need to do is get the program and let us know how it works for you. We'll let you keep it for free. I know the Total Transformation works because I used these techniques with my own son and with troubled kids for over 30 years. Let me prove to you that it works by giving you the program for free.
Call now, 1-800-299-2896. 1-800-299-2896. That's 1-800-299-2896.
This is Lisa Benson, and week after week, I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing, nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free, 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
Welcome back to the Lisa Benson Show, and I'm pleased to be joined by my co-host, Jerry Gordon, senior editor of the New English Review and its blog, The Iconoclast, and our guest, Dr. Sherkoh Abbas, a veteran leader of the Syrian Kurdish community and president of the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria, and a longtime friend in the trenches on the Syrian issue. Sherkoh, let me let you maybe finish off the discussion on Israel and Hamas and add any thoughts you may have as we transition into discussing about Syria.
Great. It was a good discussion. Actually, I heard Jerry mention about 1,030 Palestinians were killed and probably thousands were injured. This is a basically fertile ground for Hamas or Al Qaeda alike or Muslim Brotherhood to recruit those families that they have losses. That's why Hamas is always trying to prevent Palestinians to leave certain area and always launching in an area where the civilian people reside in order to get in harm's way and eventually you try to recruit them. So in essence, really, what Hamas is doing is destroying Palestinians. This is the problem that we see that the Arab nations and their philosophy, from Saudis to Qataris to you name it, to Egypt, to Syria, to Iraq, all of them, their philosophy is to destroy Israel, to destroy anybody not Arab in the Middle East, from Israelis to the Kurds to other minorities such as Coptics and Assyrians. So the bottom line is this philosophy needs to be changed, and it's more than 5 or 6 decades that they've been teaching this culture of hate and killing and destruction, and all their philosophy is evolving around one thing: is how to get rid of a human being or life, to destroy life, instead of building life, instead of thinking of the future for their people and building cultures and building cities and towns and better life for their people. All they're doing, making it difficult for their people and destroying their life and blaming on everybody else. So one thing, we deserve these kind of leaders that we have in that area because we accept them and work within those. Unfortunately, the Syrian people, as you can see, they're trying to get rid of some of that and what kind of punishment they're getting. So my take on this, Hamas is absolutely a terrorist organization, just like Hezbollah, just like other groups in the Middle East, Al Qaeda, and we need to find a way to deal with them. But it has to be in a comprehensive way dealt with them once for all. You cannot just keep doing this every couple of years. I think we need to find a way to make sure that the Palestinian people do not engage or accept those kind of people as a representative. And it's difficult to really, on this program, talk about those points. That's my point on that.
Jerry, you want to start us off on a discussion on Syria?
I do, and I want to focus on essentially what is occurring in the northeastern quadrant of Syria that's very dangerous. It's the return in massive force of the new and revitalized Islamic State, formerly ISIS, once a minor portion of al-Qaeda that has vanquished al-Qaeda itself. This is really addressed to the both of you. ISIS, or IS, has really conducted a barbaric jihad, conquering large swaths of Syria and Iraq, ejecting Christians and slaughtering Muslim opponents. Who aided the launch of ISIS in Syria, and why has it emerged so rapidly as a major threat to the region and the West?
Sherkoh, you want to start off?
Okay, sure. It started not under ISIS first. In fact, the first group were recruited by Assad in Iran to attack American troops in Iraq, and they were successful in harming Americans and derailing Americans in Iraq by creating a suicide bombs and killing Americans. This is one of their tactics they used, Assad's regime. When American put some pressure on them and also pulled off out of Iraq, basically a lot of those were put in prison in Syria. Later on, when the Syrian revolution started, people wanted democracy and freedom. And believe me, none of those were terrorists. None of those were what you see like Al-Qaeda or ISIS-like groups. They were basically people wanted democracy, wanted freedom, and they wanted change. They wanted to have a different culture of change for Syrian people and be friends with the West and look for democracies around the world and build a better relationship with its neighbors. However, Assad's regime was very clever in Iran by releasing these folks to discredit the revolution and basically label it as an Al-Qaeda terrorist organization. And those people were working on behalf of Assad. Basically, they were free to not rob and kill and take pockets and lead those areas. But their job was to infiltrate and free Syrian army and the revolution and send a message to the West. They succeeded by not allowing any funding to go or any help to democratic groups like Zuhdi and myself. We started working on early on. Basically, all the help went to radicals, and eventually, some of those groups got so big that they started to take over the oil field in Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor and Hasaka area. That they were more powerful. That Assad and Maliki wanted to use similar scenario to in Iraq to allow Maliki to freely do what Assad was doing in Syria. Basically, discredit any opposition and bomb any area they wanted to get a green light for any action that they can get and get all the help from the U.S. and the West. However, this plan was derailed. Initially, they were supposed to go actually march on the Kurdish area in Iraq against the Kurdish federal region. But Izzat Duri, Saddam's longtime friend, had several months ago meetings with the Saudis, and Saudis convinced many of the longtime Ba'athists and the Arab tribes in Iraq to work with them, and they basically got out of control of Assad and Iran in Iraq. In Syria, that's another matter. Still, they're under influence of General Mohammed al-Mansoura, and this is where they're orchestrating. However, it looks like in the recent weeks, the issue is changing where they're losing the control in Hasaka and Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor as well. So it looks like they're starting to lose. And unfortunately, a lot of the Arab settlers who moved to the Kurdish area now are switching alliance from Assad, working with this savage that it makes Al-Qaeda moderate compared to...
And I think, Sherkoh, what people should understand is that there's a sort of evil alliance that happens. ISIS, as a Sunni radical group, went into Iraq, and the Ba'ath stood on the sidelines. The Ba'ath Sunni Abbas stood on the sideline because the generals wanted to see Maliki go down and have allowed them to flourish in northern Iraq because it sort of feeds their sense of trying to destabilize a so-called revolution against Maliki. So we see this happening in every Arab country. In Syria, Assad has not bombed the ISIS areas because he uses them to legitimize murder and pillaging. So when we come back, we'll continue this discussion.
Hi, this is Lisa Benson, and I have a recommendation for you. If you are looking for a legal firm that specializes in federal tax issues, mergers and acquisitions, estate planning and business development, or even want to start a nonprofit organization, I strongly urge you to call my friends at The Keel Group. The Keel Group has a nationwide clientele located in Virginia with many clients in Arizona, and it is where I send all my business clients for legal services. They are a legal firm, CPA certified, and business consultants. In fact, they are a full-service legal and business consulting firm specializing in corporate, entrepreneurship, tax, estate, and nonprofit. I send my clients there to expedite their nonprofit filing. Please give them a call by going to www.keelgroup.com. That is Keel, K-E-E-L, group.com. I use them, and I hope you will as well. Thank you.
This is Michael Medved for townhall.com. A big majority of Americans say Israel is justified in its response to Hamas, but a CNN poll shows revealing ideological differences in attitudes toward the Middle East. Among Republicans, 73% stand with Israel, and with independents, that support hits 56%. But among Democrats, only a minority, 45%, feels the Jewish state is justified in its military response to stop rocket attacks and terror tunnels. Across the spectrum, Americans who back Israel outnumber those who don't by nearly 2-1. But the reaction of Democrats reflects the left's embrace of moral equivalence and a rejection of clear distinctions between right and wrong. Conservatives feel more comfortable with absolutes. Sometimes conflicts do involve a struggle between good and evil. In this war, Israel is fighting to put an end to violence. Hamas is fighting to continue and intensify terror. One war aim is admirable, the other is evil. I'm Michael Medved.
This is Lisa Benson, and week after week, I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
Welcome back to the Lisa Benson Show. This is Zuhdi Jasser filling in for Lisa while she's away on a speaking tour. I'm president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and I'm joined by Jerry Gordon, my good friend, senior editor of the New English Review and blog The Iconoclast, and Dr. Sherkoh Abbas, a veteran leader of the Syrian Kurdish community and president of the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria. Before we jump back to Syria, breaking news is that President Obama has insisted and declared that there be an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. And, I have to tell you, it seems that he has missed what Secretary Kerry failed to understand when he asked for a ceasefire also, is that Hamas doesn't seem to listen to that. But, Jerry, what do you think? And let's continue our conversation on Syria.
Well, I think that what's happened here is that the administration unfortunately has tried to use those very same Islamists threatening a federated democratic Syria next door, and I'm referring to Turkey and Qatar, essentially by using them as, quote, leverage to get Hamas to the table. It's clear that Egypt doesn't want that. Egypt just announced today that it destroyed another 13 tunnels in the Rafah Gap area. And certainly the Saudis, the UAE, and others, ironically, in the Arab League, are supportive of essentially Israel's current operation there, although in the end, who knows where they'll end up.
Exactly. And as we look at Syria, the administration's policy has been proven repeatedly to not only be a failure, but to allow the flourishing of jihadists. And to continue on my sentiments in the last few seconds of our previous segment, it is just befuddling that nobody sees that the Assad regime, the Ba'athists of Iraq that still exist and are trying to regain control from Maliki is continuing now to become basically annexed by Iran. All of these power brokers benefit from allowing radical Islam to grow, ISIS groups to grow, and then all of a sudden, the cycle is that these groups get larger, then all of a sudden they become victims of those groups that they create, and they claim to be taken by surprise, and then they start dealing with them. We saw this with Mubarak and the Brotherhood. We saw it with the Saudis and the Wahhabi extremist groups, Al-Qaeda, and then they claim to be our friends. So the issue is in Syria, what should be the strategy? Anyone who tells you that they know what's going on inside Syria, I always tell my friends, really don't know what they're talking about because nobody really knows what's happening. But, from here on, what really should be the policy? And Sherkoh, what do you think we should do?
Well, first on Obama's position on ceasefire right now, I think this is another way bolstering Hamas, and they would basically claim as a victory again. So instead of trying to fix the root cause, he's trying to basically put a Band-Aid in and help Hamas here. On the Syria issue, you're absolutely right. Many experts come on TVs and radios. Absolutely, they have no clue what's going on in Syria. In Syria, it's very complicated. The overall majority of people want freedom. Assad regime have been able to penetrate the Syrian opposition, Syrian National Coalition, and Syrian National Council, and also penetrated the radical Free Syria army groups such as Jabhat al-Nusra, ISIS, and other groups. And unfortunately, many of those groups start to gather and create more radical, less pro-Assad, or at least they started to go in a direction more controlled under Saudi influence in trying to gain the ISIS in Syria and in Iraq basically to more pro-Saudi policies. Whether they will succeed or not, this is remain to be seen because Assad is very clever and with help of Iran and Russia, they know how to maneuver. But for sure on the battles, and at least in Hasaka and Qamishli area and Deir ez-Zor, Raqqa, they start to lose to the ISIS. Speaking of number of people got killed, Hamas is the people, or at least Palestinian, 1,200 people, or maybe less, 1,000 people were killed. Is their blood more redder than Syrian? Are there? Look at the Syrian. At the same period when Israeli started to attack in self-defense against Hamas, more than 2,800 Syrian people were killed.
And Sherkoh, when we come back, let's continue that thought. I don't mean to interrupt you, but what is, now clearly the vacuum is increasing in Syria. What can we do to fill it, understanding the limitations of President Obama's lack of a policy, but what can we do, and all people of conscience in the West that understand national security, to move forward in this vacuum that enlarges for the jihadists?
Twitter can get confusing and congested with lots of stuff you don't need or want. So let 960 The Patriots tweets that matter vet out all the chirping. We follow the important names and only retweet the information that you want to know about. Get commentary on and retweets from the likes of Hugh Hewitt, Megyn Kelly, and Real Clear Politics, and all of your local politicians and national pundits. We do the legwork, and all you have to do is follow us on Twitter today. Twitter.com/960 The Patriot.
Lisa Benson and the team of Lisa Benson Consulting have more than 25 years of experience in business development, public relations, strategic planning, and branding of candidates and causes. As a direct result of Lisa Benson's expertise, LBC's record of accomplishments has been witnessed by their many clients who have achieved more than $500 million in bottom-line results. If you're thinking of running for office, starting a nonprofit organization, or have an organization that's in need of gaining greater public attention to meet its goals, give Lisa a call at 602-790-6418. Lisa Benson is a compelling and engaging public speaker with in-depth knowledge on issues such as national security, foreign and domestic policy, and nationwide training on effective grassroots mobilization tactics. Call LBC today at 602-790-6418. That's 602-790-6418 to schedule your free 30-minute consultation or to book Lisa Benson to speak to your group.
Some call it a division, some a lost cause. But we know if we stand together, amazing things can happen.
Not to fundamentally transform America, but to save it and to fundamentally restore the promise of America.
960 The Patriot and American Vision Windows present United We Stand with Sarah Palin and Dinesh D'Souza, September 4th at Grand Canyon University. A night to join together and stand up for America.
No, we don't give up. We fight for what's right, and that's why we elect those to stand firm and speak on behalf of we the people.
What he's trying to do is right the ship of the world that he sees as being wrong side up for 500 years.
United We Stand with Sarah Palin and Dinesh D'Souza, September 4th, 7 p.m. at GCU Arena. Get your tickets or exclusive VIP meet and greet at 960thepatriot.com. Brought to you by Shasta Pool Repair.
United we stand, and divided we will fall.
Hi, I'm LeVar Burton, and I'm proud to be a book person. Every child deserves to have access to books because children who grow up with books invariably do better in life than children who do not. How do I choose a book? Is it the cover? I guess, sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's the title. I guess I'm pretty visual, so it's a combination of those two. The first book I remember was Captain's Courageous. When I finished that book, I had become so involved with these characters. So here's the thing. If a book's really, really impressing me and the writing is really, really good, I will peek and see what the last paragraph is. Because the endings of books, if it's really, really well done, that ending, that last thought should rock you. I am a book person, and if you're a book person too, read to a child and spark a lifetime of ambition. Join me at bookpeopleunite.org because reading is fundamental. A public service announcement brought to you by Reading is Fundamental, Library of Congress, and the Ad Council.
Your home for United We Stand with Sarah Palin and Dinesh D'Souza. One night only, September 4th at GCU Arena. Tickets and info at 960thepatriot.com. If you're looking for the latest videos, audio, and articles from the top political minds from around the country, like Jonah Goldberg, Thomas Sowell, Michelle Malkin, and many more, then The Patriot has you covered. Just log on to 960thepatriot.com today, where the Constitution lives. 960, The Patriot.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
Welcome back to the Lisa Benson Show. This is Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Proud to be sitting in for Lisa while she spreads the message of national security in the Bible Belt. I'd like to continue our conversation in this, our last segment with Jerry, if you could.
I basically want to ask Zuhdi and Sherkoh a fairly basic question. Why has the administration's policy failed, and why has it abandoned any leadership role in supporting a free, democratic, and federated Syria against the onslaught of a barbaric jihad like that perpetrated by ISIS?
Well, I think if I could start off, Sherkoh, in order to counter an ideology, you have to provide an ideology to fill in that vacuum. And if you don't have anything to provide, and you lead not only from behind, but as a bystander and as somebody sitting in the stands eating popcorn, the bottom line is that they don't want to provide an alternative, number one. Number two, they don't really want to identify who the enemy is and see it as one common enemy. They continue to want to compartmentalize every country into a separate issue, be it Egypt, Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, homeland security here at home, and the Brotherhood. They don't even want to identify Islamism. And unfortunately, until we have a national consensus, not only in Washington but across the country, that we are fighting a common ideology of political Islam and its offshoots that include ISIS and Hamas and Al-Qaeda, and the jihadists and the Muslim Brotherhood that took over Egypt, that these ideas, some of which are terroristic and some of others are socialistic and fascistic that take over governments in democratic ways, as we saw in Iran, you're not going to be able to have any type of feasible strategy, and that needs a doctrine. This president has not had a doctrine, which we've called for as being a liberty doctrine, and unfortunately, without that doctrine, we're going to continue to be missing in action. And I think Syrians have been the biggest victims of this because there was such a profound opportunity when Sherkoh and I got together in March of 2011, and we saw the Syrians doing what we had asked them to do begging them to do for decades against the Baathists and Assad. We thought there was an opportunity there, as Syria was a nexus of such diversity of many different faiths and cultures, and yet it was missed, and now we see a radicalization of a population. Sherkoh, what's your sense of?
I echo exactly what you said. I think there's a lack of leadership and lack of any ideas. But also, somehow I start to wonder and question who is benefiting from all this chaos. All we can see, Iran is benefiting, Russia is benefiting. All the enemy of the West, enemy of democracy, enemy of the U.S., Israel, Europeans. All the democratic groups within Syria and the Middle East are losing. So somebody else is benefiting. We lost billions or trillions in Iraq, and many souls. They're liberating the Iraqi people. U.S. handed Iraq to Iran. And in Syria, they had a perfect opportunity to do something there. Again, they lost that opportunity. So I start to wonder why everything is going and skewing more where Iran and Russians are benefiting here.
And the biggest victims, by the way, of this, we've seen ISIS kill 12 to 15 imams just in the past week in northern Iraq. And Muslims are, I believe, and this is why we do our work, right, Sherkoh, are the first victims, the moderate Muslims that would have fight this.
You're absolutely right. And in the past, just 3 months, more than probably close to 1,000 Kurds, young, from 14, 15 to as much as probably 30 years old, their heads were cut off by ISIS in Syria. Again, this group, PYD or YPG, it's a Kurdish, so-called Kurdish. It's not really Kurdish because it's forcing the Kurdish group to work with them against the Syrian opposition, and again, this is a group, a Marxist, a group that hijacked the Kurdish cause, just like Assad hijacked the Syrian revolution. They're working in concert with General Mamluk and General Mohammed Mansoura. Those two, they're using staging the fights between the PYD, which is a PKK-linked group, and ISIS until recently, where ISIS got the upper hand, and now the Kurds being slaughtered in that area. So, in essence, one thing we need to ask ourselves: what is the root cause, and what can be done? I think the root cause is really Sykes-Picot Agreement, putting a lot of dictators in place, and the map of Middle East needs to be redrawn, and we need to put some democratic group that who can influence and become the engine of change in that region. And for sure, Iraqi Kurdistan been a good example protecting Christian minorities and others, and it's democratic. And so the Kurds can be a model in the Middle East. Why there's 22 Arab nations, there's an Israeli nation, there's a Turkish nation, Persian nation. Why there's not a Kurdish nation? Having a Kurdish nation in that region, I think, could influence.
What are you calling for, a redrawing of the Syrian borders?
I think we're redrawing the whole Middle East, looking at the only way. Otherwise, Iran is entrenched in that area. It would be very difficult to do this. And looking at the whole Middle East and Iraqi Kurdistan, why they cannot declare an independent nation. I think it's something needs to be looked at. The very minimum, Syria should have a federalism. If there's no federalism,
absolutely. The federal part, I agree with. I think ultimately, though, we take one step at a time. We need to get to the ideological battle first. I think Syria has a diversity. If Kurdistan breaks off from Syria, you then actually end up radicalizing even exponentially the other two segments. You see Assad now moving not against the ISIS regions of Syria. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen the most deaths in Syria in the entire revolution. Why? He's moving in on Aleppo, which we always said when I testified to Congress in the summer of 2011, Aleppo hadn't woken up to the revolution, and we said, when they wake up, so too will the rest of Syria, because that's where the Sunni business and intellectual community is centered. And now he's pushing in and destroying that city from its core, and that cannot, I think, be allowed to divide into three parts, the rest of Syria.
What the point I'm making, Kurds deserve more than 30, 40 million in the Middle East. Just like anybody else, they deserve to have a nation. Having the Kurds being a moderate in the region, and for sure the same philosophy that you're teaching, Zuhdi, is the Kurdish teaching. So this is something positive could be influenced in the region. And Iraqi Kurdistan could be independent. It could be influenced on that region, because even the Sunni in Iraq, they started to ask for federalism in Iraq because they see the Kurds have done very much positive things for their own people. So having a federalism in Syria is a positive thing, and I think we need to look at the whole Middle East by not allowing the dictatorship to survive, because they do everything and they make their people suffer and blame on the West and blame Israel for it.
And the key is to evolve it beyond two sides. There are more than two sides in the battle in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere. Jerry?
It's a question I can pose to you both. It's rhetorical, but clearly Syria lies on Israel's Golan frontier. What has Israel contributed, essentially, to the alleviation of the plight of Syrians? And has there been any relationship between the democratic opposition in Syria and the Israeli government?
Well, I think that's such an important question, and it took the Syrian National Council and whatever they're calling themselves now of this coalition, they're still slowly coming around, but they still haven't. I think I would ask people to look at some of the writings and comments of Kamal Labwani, who finally in the past few months has come out and said, we should have visited more closely with Israel and guaranteed them security of the Golan as being a mechanism by which we could actually protect some of the more moderates in Syria. And he's realizing that there was no hope for the Syrian National Council because it was being protected by Turkey and Qatar, that the Islamists, including many American Syrians that are Islamists that went back, including Louay Safi and others, to run the SNC from an Islamist Brotherhood perspective. And Labwani's awakening to the fact that the West is his friend and Israel is at the head of that coalition, and the Golan is part of that. Sherkoh, what do you think of that?
I agree with you that, for sure they have some disagreement with Dr. Labwani. With my discussion with him, he always muddies the water on the Kurdish issues, but for sure it's a change in a position. In fact, Israeli missed an opportunity here. Many Syrian people do not view Israel as the number one enemy that Abbas try to portray them. So they start to view Israel as absolutely savior. They could come to their help, but for some reason Israelis stayed on the sideline. And to my sources, that a lot of pressure from Obama's administration to stay out of it. This is one thing that the reason for them basically not intervening in that area. But I think they should engage the Syrian opposition, the Democratic group, and should look at the Syria being as a federal region next to them, and their issues could be resolved peacefully. And this, hence, they could pollinate in the region, bring more peace. So I think they should use this opportunity. Otherwise, they would view them as a protector of Assad, or at least the status quo is better for them.
And there could have been a strategy that they rolled out piecemeal into areas like Southeast and others where there are less Islamists and more moderates. And, I think ultimately the other part we haven't talked about is the destabilization regionally of the 3 to 5 million Syrians that are in Jordan and in Turkey and in, the surrounding countries in Lebanon and elsewhere. And ultimately that is a major security threat to Israel and the entire region. Jerry?
I agree. I mean, Israel has done efforts to alleviate the humanitarian concern of those Syrians on the Golan frontier by establishing a field hospital up there to take care of them, and in more serious cases, give them airlift capacity to the major medical centers in central Israel for treatment. And I think that has been appreciated by what we understand from those Syrians who've been involved.
And I think, ultimately, as we look for what the right policies are moving forward, we need leaders. It may not be coming from the Obama administration, but leaders in Washington to begin to call out not only the Russians, but the Iranians. And, Syria has become a client state of Iran. And we need to link the reason the nuclear talks are failing to the fact that they see us doing nothing in in Syria. So they see basically as a green light, no different than the Russians saw our lack of activity in Syria for a potent pushback against their long-standing relationship with the Ba'athists in Syria to allow them to do whatever they want in Ukraine and elsewhere. And we need to begin to have this conversation and pressure that will have a strategy for promoting liberty. In the last few minutes, I have to tell you, as a Muslim, we're ending our fasting month of Ramadan today. Is our last day of fasting, and I wish all my Muslim friends Eid al-Fitr Mubarak and a blessed end to our month of reflection and atonement, and that we set aside emotion and vitriol and look within ourselves for repair, to free ourselves from a lot of the baggage of blaming others, and look hopefully and question, what is our legacy of our faith? Is it to leave Hamas and ISIS behind, or is it to actually leave modernity and vibrant democracies that protect all faiths, Jews, Christians, and others, in the way our founding fathers did in America, and to pray for the safety of all and the end of wars and the safety of the West and Israel in its fight for freedom. Jerry?
I'd like to bring a message from Lisa Benson herself. Basically, during this week that she's been there, it's been a fantastic development and a groundswell of grassroots interest in one of the keystone efforts of this group. It's called Defund Hamas. Go to the dedicated website for it, and you will find out that basically many people have started to put selfies there on that website in support of that effort. So Defund Hamas should be the message of the day.
Thank you, Jerry Gordon from the Iconoclast and editor of the English Review. Thank you, Sherkoh Abbas, a veteran leader of the Syrian Kurdish community. And thank you most especially to Lisa Benson for the opportunity to share our thoughts with her listeners and her efforts. And this is Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, wishing you all God bless America and happiness. Take care.